Welcome to Raising Excellence, everyone. I'm Mike Friedman, and I'm here today with someone who needs no introduction to Central Florida, and it is Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma. Sheriff, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mike, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Getting the word out there of the importance of our kids and our youth, and the great success that you're having here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'd like to, first of all, again, I want to appreciate so much. I know you are a busy man and you are rocking and rolling all the time. So to take a little bit of time out for us, I really appreciate it. I know your experience being as profound as it is, we're going to get a lot of gems, a lot of little nuggets. It's going to help a ton of people. So I'm really, really excited about that. So I'd like to just kind of start off. So talk to me a little bit about when you started way back, even I know you were in the Marines. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? And really, what was the motivation for doing that? And was it about public service? Kind of talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually, Mike, well before that. I grew up in a loving family who knew a little bit about service, hardworking father and mother, and really took good care of my sister and I. But I remember having a conversation when somebody asked me, I think it was the first time that I was officially running for sheriff. They said, "When did you know that you wanted to get into law enforcement?" And I thought deeper about that comment, and I said, you know what, let's just say public service, right? I knew that I wanted to do something that made me feel good about myself. And as a young child, I think that I thought that superhero was an occupation. I would see things on TV. I would see kids on television programs and movies get bullied, and it would touch a nerve in me. It would hit a button where I wanted to kind of get out there. I wanted to be that person that wore the cape. And of course, as I got a little bit older and realized that superhero was not a real thing, and those people that, in at least in that sense, did not exist.
Right.
I wanted to find a calling and a passion that brought me as close to that feeling as I possibly could get, and of course military and policing here at the sheriff's office was kind of a natural fit.
I think you definitely realized that superhero role. I mean, here you are. It's amazing the impact that you have, and the amount of people that you directly and indirectly affect every single day, and so. Going through the military, talk to me about some of the things that you learned about youth and about really, we talk about creating excellence in our youth. What was some of the things that you think really resonated with you?
I think back to my time, in the Marine Corps, which is by far the greatest experience that I had to shape leadership skills. Now, I later, ended up, getting a master's degree in leadership and being a student my entire adult life of great leaders, actually become close friends with major authors and people that work in the leadership space, Simon Sinek and Lee Cockerell, and done a lot of work directly and personally with them. But it was the Marine Corps that really challenged everything that I thought I knew about what good, effective, solid leaders are. It breaks away from stereotypes, because now, especially with our kids, you hear about these generational differences, right? We hear about the millennials and all of these different groups that have their unique skill sets, their unique interests. And I think we spend a lot of time pointing fingers. And when I realized in the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps can indoctrinate you into a set of norms, customs, and values that predate your existence. And that's through education, and it's through classroom training. And I remember taking a class, this was at the FBI National Academy in Quantico. I remember taking a class where the person walked in and said, "Can leadership be taught?" And I remember thinking about the question and building up enough courage, and I finally raised my hand and said, if leadership cannot be taught, I'm wasting a lot of my time, effort, and energy taking this course. And the person at the lectern, the person teaching the class, said, hold on to that thought for a moment, because what I'm going to suggest to you is the word that we should be using is not necessarily teaching. See, teaching is a representation of what the person up at the whiteboard or at the lectern, or in the older days, the blackboard, is doing. What we should be talking about is, does it have the ability to be learned? And learning is something that we have to do ourselves. In order to learn, we have to humble ourselves, open up our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to embrace a set of concepts that we may not have previously known.
Sure.
And I think as leaders and as adults and as human beings, we have to embrace a concept of perpetual learning. As soon as you think you know it, they change it or it evolves. And I think that the Marine Corps really helped me understand that with the leadership traits and sacrifice and commitment. It was a great opportunity to pave my way to a career in law enforcement.
I mean, as a parent, what do you think are some of the things that they can do to instill that love or that they must be a forever learner? And they have to, like you talk about, they have to be open. They have to be open to growth and learning. It's so hard for parents nowadays, right? Because I mean, everything is 5 seconds. You have a couple seconds on an app. Well, at least we hear about that. You know what I mean? I mean, talk to me about that. Is that something that's doable? Like, and how do they do that?
I really think it is. I think it's less about what we say and more about what we do. Research has been done that people lose and they don't comprehend, they don't embrace, and it doesn't stick with them a good percentage of what somebody will say. Like you get I make a lot of speeches in this position. I have a lot of times to get in front of audiences, and you have about 3 minutes on the onset of that to capture somebody's attention, and then you have to do something throughout the journey to kind of demonstrate to somebody that you are actually practicing what you're preaching. Is how we refer to it, and I think that as adults and as parents, embracing the concept of perpetual learning is so incredibly important, because we all risk the hazards of coming across, as we've been there, we've done that. And what I say, in the ranks of the sheriff's office is we risk the hazard of becoming occupationally institutionalized to a set of practices and principles. And if somebody really dug down deep with us and said, why do you believe this? Why are you doing this? The real answer is because this is the way I was taught many years ago, and I have never expanded my horizon. I've never looked at it with a different lens and to understand. And I think that that's important. And sometimes we don't get it right. There's this theory called the Gestalt shift, and the Gestalt shift is mostly illustrated to the layman, where they'll see a photograph. It's typically a drawing, but it's an image where two people can stand at the exact same spot at the exact same time and look at the same thing, but yet see something different. And neither one of them are wrong. But sometimes it's that scenario where somebody says, is it an elderly woman or is it a young woman? And if you look and you squint your eyes long enough, maybe you can see what somebody else sees. And I think in a society that we are trained to believe that everything is black and white, it is not so. So seek to understand before being understood.
Right. That's pretty profound, especially nowadays, and especially where we are. Not to get political, but in the election cycle when we're shooting this show, and it's so profound, because if we did that right, we would be so much better off as a society.
Yeah, I think so. I think the art of compassion. Another leadership a person who I've become friends with, I've worked with a lot, is a guy named Bob Chapman. And Bob Chapman is the CEO of a company called Barry Waymiller, a very successful company. I actually got introduced to Bob Chapman from Simon Sinek, and he's opened up. He's authored a handful of books, but he taught me this thing, as simple as he can put it. He says, Dennis, he goes, what we have to realize as a society is everybody is somebody's precious child. They're conceived, they're born, they're brought into this world with typically at least one other human being caring about them. Hopefully it's one of their parents, but not always in every case, right? But somebody wants that person to succeed. Somebody loves that person with all of their heart.
Right.
But sometimes when we evolve, we sometimes forget that these are other human beings. We have a lot of things that divide us: our politics, our religion, what football team we like. But coming together and understanding that we have more in common than what we do that separates us is so incredibly important. And it connects to that human element, especially with kids, where you turn around and in a society where everyone is turning to their device and they're lacking social interaction,
Sure.
which is absolutely necessary in order to connect as human beings. You can now get dates online. You can get
Right.
degrees online. Heck, if you walk into a restaurant and once upon a time families would say it's dinner time, put your phones down and let's share some interaction, some interpersonal skills. You have to scan a QR code to even get the menu in a restaurant.
Right.
So this is
And we see
the
that
dilemma
now more
we're up
and more,
against.
right? Like we
Yeah.
see even like, as a family, you go out to dinner, right? And, the family, everyone's on their cell phone. It's just the way it is.
It's hard to resist it.
And it's interesting what you said about ever changing and growing and not being caught up in a mold. Our founding Grandmaster, Senior Grandmaster Ed Parker, one of his famous quotes was, "Don't ever traditionalize my art." And so there's so many philosophies that we can take and apply them to life. And it's tough because as a parent, they're trying the best they can to. They realize it, right? They realize what's going on with the lack of communication. I mean, other than just being the great example and other than just doing what they know they should do and try and be a little more, sensitive to that and focused on themselves. Is there anything else you think that they could do to bring these kids out and make them better communicators?
I mean, I could talk all day about recommendations on things that they can do, things that we've been exposed to. I think it comes down to don't get so caught up with trying to be a friend or trying to be liked that you're not respected. And sometimes there's this dilemma between the two, likability and being respected. And I think that when you ask smart adults, would you rather be liked or respected, they lean towards respected because they know that that's the right answer.
That's what they should say.
That's what they should say.
But deep down, we all want to be
But when
loved
their actions, they more demonstrate this likability. Like sometimes parents will say things like, "Don't do that," whatever it is. "Don't do that in front of me," which indirectly to the adolescent mind says, "Okay, I can do this anywhere else as long as it's not in front of you." And I think that small things like this slip, which gives this unintended blessing, where the parent would say, "I never told you could do that," and the child would say, "No, you said don't do it around me."
Right.
And both would be 100% accurate. But I think it also comes down to,
it's like you say, words matter.
Yeah, words matter. And being a parent is tough work. It's tough work. We have disproportionate single parents. We have people working long hours. There was once upon a time in America where typically kids would come home from school and there will be somebody at the house there to help with the homework and get a healthy meal. And those times are fewer and fewer. And this is why we see, people leaning on other services, whether it's karate, whether it's boys and girls clubs, whether these after school activities for latchkey kids, as they call them, where they're coming home after school. But I think as parents and as a society, we have to be okay with making mistakes, as long as the mistakes that we make tomorrow are less significant than the ones that we make today. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, if we think back to our own childhood 40 years ago, 35, 45 years ago, there were things that happened on school campuses and playgrounds and that were just chalked up to silly, inappropriate behavior. And when you demonstrated that as an adult, people would separate you and say, "Stop it, you're acting like a bunch of kids."
Right.
So I think somewhere along the way that we've lost focus, that sometimes kids do inappropriate and I would argue stupid things.
Right.
And diversion programs and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and not doing unintended harm and damage.
Right.
Again, the mistakes that we make tomorrow should be less significant than the ones that we make today if we're learning from our mistakes.
We're getting better.
And another word that I don't, and I'm not supportive of, is the word punishment. whether it's a punishment in a household or punishment in the criminal justice system. I don't use the word punishment because punishment suggests that I'm doing something to you, when the more appropriate word is consequence. Your consequence for doing this at home is you're going to be on restriction. You're going to have whatever consequence it is. If you break the law and you're violated and you're incarcerated in a correctional facility, that is your consequence.
Right.
I haven't done that to you. Society has not done that to you. You've done it to yourself. And until people embrace that understanding that you can have whatever life you want to have,
Right.
don't be your own worst enemy. These people are doing it to themselves. No one else is doing it to them.
That's a huge distinction, what you just said. And I think it really gets down to, like you say, accountability. And so as a parent, it really gets down to, like you said, words matter. Hey, this is a consequence for what you did. There's going to be a positive, there's going to be a negative. And in the household, that's a very profound, because if you start out early, you don't have a lot of the situations that I know you've been dealing with in the school system. With, you have all these kids and you have these young people. I try and wrap my brain around it, right? How can you have a kid, 13, 14, 15 years old, make school threats like they're going to do all these things to a school and other people? And what I like to sometimes do is to, if I can draw a really wide polarity between what you're doing now and what's going to happen down the road, maybe we have a better shot at drawing better awareness and focus to it, so we fix the problems now, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at kids that are 14, 15 years old and I don't know, like acting out, I don't know what else you would call it. These things start 10, 15 years, 20 years predate to that, right?
Yeah. Well, what I say a lot in this space is delinquency starts with a simple thought. And unfortunately for society, there's not one other human being that I've ever met that can determine what ideas are rolling around in somebody's head. It's the first time that they start to manifest those ideas with their behavior in actions that we have to pay close attention. And it's typically not the most extreme of those circumstances. Now, I will tell you, the school safety is probably one of the most significant obligations of society, not just a sheriff's office, but we have this unique partnership with Seminole County Public Schools. We engage, we make sure that our school resource deputies and officers are trained to address active threat. But while at the same time, when there are underlying conditions that are present and there's behaviors that need attention, we have to act immediately on those things. These are when the guidance counselor calls the parents for a parent-teacher meeting where Johnny or Sue is drawing some disturbing images on the paper, where they start to get in certain types of trends. It's important for parents to be involved and engaged in the process. But with the threats, a couple of things that are not spoken about a lot. And, I graduated high school in 1990. I'm 52 years old now. So, but I remember sitting a good portion of my junior and senior year in the football stadium because somebody put a dime in a phone, called in a bomb threat, and they evacuated the school. We all sat there because they had a final exam that they wanted to do, and they would bring the sheriff's office and they would bring the bomb dog and they would walk through, and a couple of hours later that we would walk back on campus. So kids have been doing inappropriate things in different spaces based upon what the current trends and times were.
Right.
There's not a person that's listening to this doesn't remember that when they grew up in school, if they are of our age, that they sat in, they walked off campus because somebody called in a bomb threat.
No, I remember what you talk about as far as the bomb threats, the bullying. I was bullied pretty bad, so I remember vividly all these things going down. And
so now it's more sensationalized. So
right.
Kids are gaming online. There is greater violence in movies. Look, these are factual statements. They're
Right.
just watch some of the old horror movies, right?
Yep.
You watch Frankenstein or Dracula or The Mummy. You're not getting the gore and the horror that you're getting now. But then the kids are walking in, they're seeing this stuff, and then of course the video games. But what's not talked about enough when it comes to the delinquency and sometimes criminal behavior of kids is the why.
Right.
Why are they doing this? For some kids, they have been bullied, and peer pressure has a significant influence on what happens, especially the younger the person is, where they sometimes know right from wrong. When you ask them, why were you doing this? Now, of course, not the threat scenario, but let's say, why did you skip school?
Right.
Well, Johnny and Sue and all the popular kids were skipping school, so I ended up being a follower. So teaching leadership at a young age, teaching self-confidence at a young age is so incredibly important. And I know that you've made this your life's work is teaching self-confidence. And it's okay to say no.
Right.
But what we have to do is we have to give our kids an excuse. Whether a legitimate excuse or not.
Right.
I mean, the excuse can be you tell them that you have a crazy dad,
Right.
and that if you skip, he's going to walk right in the middle of school.
Right.
He's going to talk to the principal. He's going to make a scene somewhere with your parents.
I love that. And the thing about what's so great about that, what I personally find really empowering for a kid and really relaxing is it's already scripted out for them. Like you don't have to think. And one of the things that we teach in our martial arts program, we have a couple of different levels. And the first is confident communication, but the next level is awareness and then decision-making real time. And that's pretty much what you just said, right? Because it's teaching kids, it's giving them the training, the role playing, the consistency, the repetitiveness to put them in situations where in a safe place, they can practice awareness, what's going on around them. And then based on that, they can make the decision in real time. Like if they see kids drinking or like, you see, you got done leaving the party and 4 kids get in a car and 1 kid's been drinking. In that moment, what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you just like go in the car and not say anything because you're just like, it's like shock and awe? Or do you say, wait a minute, like I'm aware, I know what's going on. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I forgot. I have to run back in the house and get some. I have to call somebody or whatever that is.
And it does not always have to be the truth.
Right.
It does not have to be, hey, I feel uncomfortable about this. It doesn't always have to be that.
Right.
It could be, look, I'm allergic to using alcohol. I break out in hives.
Sure.
It's okay to come up with whatever works for you. And I get it, trying to save face and credibility on campuses. Sure. And as adults, we say, just be honest. Right. Just stand up for what is right. But look, that is easier said than done. Absolutely. And sometimes we forget what it's like. You don't want to be labeled as a snitch. And this theory, actually, we have a program that we have implemented. It's a program across the state of Florida, but we're the only policing organization that does it. It's called Stop Now and Think, which talks about, it's a cognitive behavioral therapy mindset where it gives that extra second where you can be prepared for those opportunities. I think it's got great application not only for kids but for adults.
Sure.
Sometimes we can let our emotions get the best of us, and we find ourselves doing something that we would normally do. And then when you ask, why did you do that?
Caught up in the moment.
I don't know why I was doing it. I got caught up in the moment. You see elected officials doing things.
Sure.
You see elected officials on the national stage saying things that they should not say. Sure. I mean, you saw it in some recent debates.
Right. See it all the time.
All the time. And then you go back and you say, you know what? When I go back with my team and we hot wash, what we call in the military and law enforcement, when we hot wash the scenario, we say, okay, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? And how do we make improvements?
Right.
And you have to learn from your mistakes. But generally speaking, although we have high profile incidents that occur, when a kid is bad, they're typically really bad, right? We don't hear about the detentions or the minor things, but it's nothing short of remarkable. You take Seminole County here. Seminole County is the fourth most densely populated county per square mile. It's Pinellas County, Broward County, Orange County, and then Seminole County,
wow.
meaning that is a small geographic area with 500,000 people living in here. but we have nearly 70,000 kids in Seminole County Public Schools that go to 69 campuses every single day. It is amazing. It is a big number. Yeah. It is amazing that you take $70,000 adolescents from different walks of life, different religious backgrounds, different sports teams, and living in different parts of the county, and there's not more violence, more problems.
It's amazing.
It is it's a quite remarkably smooth process, but when it's bad, it's very
and that's
bad.
What you hear about, and that's what's sensationalized.
Of course, I mean that's what you said
about before, because it seems like we're kind of narrowing things into two camps, right? We have first. You said, I love what you said when you said that everything begins with a thought. Begins with a thought, and that's all the preemptive. That's all the seed planting, right? When they're young, when they're adolescents. And then there's the second part where there's the kind of management. Hey, we're older. What do you do when you're at a party? What do you do when you're in an uncomfortable situation where your back's to the wall, you want to save face with the peer pressure, but you have to do the right thing? So that's a great strategy.
It's a strategy that I use, as an adult, as an elected official, and as the leader of the largest policing agency in Seminole County. I have to anticipate what lingers around the corner tomorrow. Sure. Later today I'll have a meeting. It's a pretty big meeting. A lot of stakeholders that are involved in it. So what I have to do is I have to anticipate what questions may come up and what problems I may face. Because if I walked through this scenario and say, should this come up, how will I respond? It makes it a practiced process. Another thing that I think is incredibly important, and again, it's your life's work here, is sometimes other people have to deliver the message. Like me as a sheriff, I can say things like, say no to drugs, mind your parents, go to school. But there's an expectation, of course you're going to say that. Right. Sheriff, don't you technically get paid to say, don't do drugs, mind your parents? There is no surprise there when I deliver that message. So it's finding and mastering the art of followership that is more important than leadership itself. I would make the argument to you that leadership is over sensationalized and over rewarded.
Sure.
Because when movements actually occur, it's typically not the leader, it's the first follower.
Yeah, can you talk to me a little bit about just unpack when you say followership? Yeah. Can you unpack that?
So we all have a choice on who we're going to look to as our mentors. If we went in a room and there was 50 people in the room and we said, who wants to be the leader? And all 50 people raised their hand, that would truly be an ineffective process. But there's something sensational about the leader. It feels like it's the right answer. If somebody said,
powerful, if you're
who wants to be the leader, who wants to be the follower?
Right.
But I think society as a whole is more inclined during routine times to follow. I'll give you a couple examples. If you've ever been to a venue where somebody's made a speech and the speech is okay, and there's an applause at the conclusion of the speech, and the person to your left and to your right decides to give a standing ovation, and that creates momentum in the room, there'll come time that you will stand or you will be ridiculed for not standing because you are simply following the movement that is occurring around you.
Sure.
In traffic safety, I'll give you an example where we inevitably have all seen that leader motorist that finds themselves stranded on the road, in the middle of the roadway. They may have a Ford F-150 pickup truck, and they're trying to do the impossible. They have their driver's side door open. They have their hand on the inside of the driver's door, the other hand at the top of the steering wheel, and they're trying to independently push their vehicle out of the roadway. He is the leader. He is intentional. He is visible on what he is trying to accomplish. He has fulfilled his job. Movement doesn't occur until the first person says, you know what? I'm putting my car in park. I'm going to park it in the middle of the road, which is clearly a violation. I'm going to get out of my car. I'm going to walk up to him and I'm going to say, do you need help? and I'm going to put my hands on the back of that car. It's that first follower that demonstrated all of the courage.
And then you see 3 or 4 other people stop, and everybody gets out.
Before you can get that car pushed out of the roadway, you will have to tell the motorist, jump in the car, just hit the brake when we stop, because it's the first follower that has demonstrated the behavior that everyone else is thinking to themselves, maybe I should be doing exactly what this person's doing. It is an underrated form of leadership. It's a combination thing. Leadership.
It's the other side of the coin.
It's not leader. It's leadership, which is the unique interaction between the leader and at least one follower. It's the chemistry that occurs between the two. And in society, we say things that if we really dissect it, it's incredibly offensive, like subordinate. The people that are in business and private sector, well, let the word subordinate roll off their tongue. But I've never met anybody in my life that wants to be sub anything. But when we say these things, there's a shifting trend that really is more inclusive. Our teams, our units, our area,
I've noticed that too.
It's more involved.
Yeah, that the words have definitely been maybe upgraded, like our language.
Words matter. Words matter. Like I don't refer to the business that I'm in as law enforcement. 99.9% of the people will refer to the work that we do, that I do, as law enforcement.
Sure.
What we do is actually policing. Law enforcement is just one segment of good, solid, effective policing.
Sure.
It is a necessary component. It is the most sensationalized component. But nevertheless, it is just a fraction of what we do. Policing should be developing an organization and people to be one with the community that looks at quality of life and concerns. And this is why talking about the kids is so important, because I have been taught that crime is a symptom of another problem. And if you want to make your communities better, stronger, safer, you have to address those underlying conditions that lead people down the path to commit crime in the first place. And this is why, Mike, you'll see us digging in on mental health and substance use and parenting. Those top 3s are in constant competition for the number one spot.
And they integrate.
If you don't get the kids right, if you don't get the schools right, trust me, we are going to inherit larger problems later in life.
Exactly, and I'm so glad you said that. That's why I'm so passionate about this movement, this podcast, because and we've had little discussions about that. And look, if we don't fix the kids of the future, if we don't fix that, then we're done.
There's no question about it.
Done. But I love what you said about when you said leadership, and you had that take on it. And it's interesting because, like you said, leadership is such a big word, right? It's thrown around, it's a buzzword. But you really, really went all in on forward thinking, being proactive. Like you were talking about that meeting you're going to go to, and how you're already thinking about what could happen, and about you're already like contingency planning and what all, you know what I mean? So you're already like there. Right. And that's something that we teach. I remember there was a book that I read. It was awesome. It was called Peak Performance. And it went into that. It went into how you read everything and review everything and pre-frame everything in your mind like it's a movie before it even happened.
Yeah.
But I love how you actually connected that to leadership. Right. And because that's something, if we did more, how much more effective would we be?
Yeah, it's definitely so. I've made mistakes before. I have been less than prepared. I have been caught off guard. But I've learned from those things.
Sure.
I've said things and said, you know what, I should have never said that, and I'm never going to say that again. But I've owned it, right? I think that's kind of the Marine Corps philosophy. You just deal with it. You just own it,
right?
And what the viewers and the listeners won't know is even when we started this podcast, as a customarily courteous thing to do, you come up to me and say, hey, I'm going to ask you about this. I'm going to talk about this. I ask me any questions. I said that because I've already prepared. I've already said that should this come up, should that come up, here's how I'm going to respond it.
Right.
And there's a level of comfort when you do that. But it takes time, it takes work, it takes energy. You have to be willing to commit the time to be knowledgeable about a topic. And the only thing that we have, the two things that we have as a society, is our words and our actions. Mm-hmm. and sometimes we struggle with our words, like especially emotional things, right?
Sure.
We give kind of parables. And we give like stories of something that because it's hard to express sometimes
Very true.
how we truly feel and the importance of a thing. And I think that we have to get better at that. We can get better at that, but it's kind of knowing what to say, when to say it. You and I can deliver a message to the same audience.
Sure.
And some will hear me say it and say, well, he's stiff. He's the sheriff. He walks around with a uniform on and all that. And you've got a cool image to you. You work with kids and all that. I say, oh yeah, Sensei said that.
Yeah.
And you see that, and you see like some of the churches that are moving in this direction where the pastors don't look like pastors that we grew up with.
Right.
They're like wearing stylish jeans and
Super
tennis
cool.
shoes and super cool, but they're doing it because they're delivering a message, and the message is sticking and connecting. And I think that's the most important part about what we're trying to accomplish.
So it's really, we talk about, it's about connection, like you said, communication. Words matter. I mean, there's just so many great things. Thoughts, being proactive and preemptive, and thinking about that, and as role models, as leaders, parents, whatever you want to call us, if we did more of that, how much better would we be? Like that, the old saying, like a rising tide raises all ships. I mean,
I think so. I think we have to
it's
constantly
pretty exciting.
anticipate. We know, like, especially raising kids. I mean, raising kids is tough. Some days are going to be good and bad, but we have a society that only highlights the good. Like, you only get on your Facebook, your Twitter feed, or whatever you have, and you only talk about the good stuff.
Right.
Hey, my son or daughter has a 4.0. They're doing this. They're part of the honor society.
Right.
But we don't post on there, but she's not getting out of bed this morning.
Right.
I've had to wake her up 4 different times.
And
or
it's funny,
she,
and it's what you go back to when you talk about, it's about being respected and about being liked. So deep down inside, even as adults, we all still want to be liked and loved.
Mike, it has created unprecedented depression because people go on social media and look at others' lives that have been embellished and think that we're missing something. Kids are coming. Sometimes it's never good enough. We're going to go to this show. Well, my friend has better tickets. There's this constant like struggle to be relevant and to post something for people that a good percentage of the people are people you don't even know. People that you would walk past in the mall and they would never even identify that you were on their feed.
Right.
And it's this movement to get likes. These streamers, these people who have this, they become influencers is what they're called, right? But they do sometimes incredibly crazy and dangerous things because they know the further they go, the greater likelihood that they're going to become popular in the space. And that's if you're looking for that trophy, it's a dangerous game of chase to get involved in.
I mean, that's something when you talk about how dangerous it is to not feel like enough, of not like feel filled up. Like that's another danger, that as parents we have to look out for, right? You know what I mean?
We have a short window as parents and kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I thought of it as a short window as I was growing up. It actually seemed like forever.
Right.
But you think about it, you've got your formative years,
right?
Your pre-verbal years where you absolutely are being influenced.
Sure.
And then your formative years, I don't know what experts will say, probably 4 or 5 when you can start, communicating and being mentored and attending school and going to lessons. And then you have till you're 18. So
quick.
So at best, you're dealing with less than 20 years. Many would argue really 14 solid years where it's not just somebody entirely dependent on another human being.
Right.
So let's say 14 years, and then you put it in perspective. And I really put it in perspective here when I passed my 30-year mark at the sheriff's office and said, I've worked for the citizens of Seminole County and been part of this organization for 2 times my entire childhood development from the moment I could speak to the moment that I was military or college eligible.
Right. Wow.
And you think about the changes
really
that have occurred during those times. And I've made the argument that when COVID happened, and this is not a political statement, but when COVID happened and people were sheltering in place and they were wearing a mask and they were limiting their social interaction, the population that was most negatively affected were those kids in the age range of 14, 15, 16. Sure. If you think about, Mike, your life, my life, at 14, 15, 16, some significant things happened during those periods. We became, if we played sports, we became a more desirable player, meaning that you played more organized sports in high school. Sure. You became a junior varsity or varsity member. You got more serious about that. You sometimes picked up your first part-time job at 15 or 16 where you left the house and you had at least one other person independently evaluating you. Sure. You got a driver's license, so you were out on the road. You had to go places. You had your first serious relationship that came together and sometimes came apart in front of an audience, which created depression. But can you imagine just for a moment if all of those experiences that largely occurred during a 2-year period you missed because you were sitting at home in front of your computer wearing a mask and not engaging socially with other human beings. Sure. So now an 18-year-old has a cognitive mindset and development of a 15-year-old, absent those experiences that I just talked to. That's a good point. And then every one of those scenarios, typically you would have somebody to come home to and say, it's going to be better. Right. I understand you're depressed because the coach benched you. Right. But it's a life lesson. And it may not, you may not be 2 years. You may be 4, 6, 8, because we don't know how long it's going to take you to recapture those experiences, right? Yeah. We may never. And like you said, then you don't have that person at home anymore. So this is why depression is skyrocketing, because for many, the first time that they're experiencing these thoughts, these unkind thoughts, they're off at the university. They're out in the military. They're in the workforce, and they're no longer there with the comfort of home to have that nurturing lesson. So, but thank you for what you do, and thank you for your advocacy, your partnership with me, our office, our organization. I know all of our leaders have been out here. You've got a beautiful facility, and thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you, Sherriff. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day. I know you are slam busy, and this is we have so much to unpack from this, and it's going to be great for everybody. So I appreciate you. Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Thanks, Mike. All right. Thanks for watching. That was another episode of Creating Excellence. Again, it was incredible to have Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma with us today. Thank you again, Sheriff, and we look forward to future projects together. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.